Alright guys, Persona 3 Reload is out. For those who don't know, this game is a remake of the 2006 PlayStation 2 game Persona 3. And if you've heard anything about the Persona games, you've probably heard that they're pretty good. This one is no exception, it's also pretty good. Just as a disclaimer, I'm only about halfway through the game and I have not played the original, so I don't really have a basis for comparison there. The Persona games are about 80 hours long, so it'd be hard to finish the game now, only a little more than a week after release. It's also a bit much to play the original before this, when they're both going to have the same story. I can't imagine my opinion on the game changing in the second half of the game though, and I don't think not knowing the original is really going to affect my opinion on this game. So anyways, the Persona games are very unique in their gameplay loop. They almost feel like two separate games. Game number one is this Japanese high school simulator where you attend classes, join clubs, hang out with friends, date girls, and travel around the town doing all sorts of activities. You only have a limited amount of time to do each of these things, meaning you have to pick and choose carefully what you're going to do each day to make sure you're managing your time right. Game number two is a JRPG where you and your allies control powerful beings called personas to navigate dungeons, fight otherworldly beings, and save the world. And there's a lot of different ways these two halves cross over. You'll have times where you have the money to buy a new weapon, but you also want to save up enough to see a movie that might boost your social stats. And those boosted social stats are necessary to form a relationship with someone else. And your deeper relationship improves your ability to create more powerful personas. And those powerful personas mean you can do a dungeon in less periods of time, meaning that you can then spend that time hanging out with more friends, or working a part-time job to earn more money, or doing other things that might boost your social stats. And so on and so on and so on. If you've never played a Persona game, then this might sound like gibberish, but to those who have played one, this all sounds very familiar to them. So I'll just say this. The game is very good. From what I hear, Persona 3 was already a good game, and this game continues to be so. Like most Persona games, it's very stylish, has a great art style, and graphically it looks good. The music and voice acting are great, so the game also sounds good. And if you're someone who likes anime type stories, well then the story's pretty good too. The gameplay is still your standard Persona gameplay, which honestly just feels really good. It's one of the few JRPGs where I really don't feel bad getting in these garbage junk encounters, because the music and the graphics and all that stuff really help carry you through the trash mobs. Even 40 hours in, I still kind of enjoy it when I get to knock down all the enemies and get an all-out attack. It just all feels really fantastic and well made. The game isn't perfect, but probably about 99% of the issues are just things that the original game had too, and they brought them over. The game has this thing where instead of having all these little dungeons as you go through, it has one massive dungeon with like 250 floors. And the floors of these dungeons are very procedurally generated instead of being like a well-designed area. But those are all issues that the original game had well, and they made it clear in their development notes that they were trying to stick to the original as much as possible. They did make some improvements, but they didn't want to change the game's original design very much. I will say that there's one modern feature that Persona 5 had that I wish they had brought back in this game, and that's all the small rewards for ranking up your social links. In Persona 5, every single rank or two with a social link, you get like this small boost to some kind of gameplay element. And it made the social links all feel a lot more rewarding beyond just the story parts of it. P3 social links are the same as the original, which are a lot more basic from a story perspective than P5's are, but they also lack the rewards that P5's had. P3 social links are the same as the original, which are not only much more basic from a story perspective, but they also lack the rewards that P5 social links had. So the social links just feel really dumbed down compared to P5. I wouldn't expect them to really expand or overcomplicate the story aspect of things. That just feels too invasive for a remake, but it would have been nice to see all those little gameplay bonuses have been added in and attached to the social links. It would have made them feel just way more rewarding than they do feel. There's also a lot of story and gameplay stuff missing that was added in Persona 3 Portable and the PSP, which had like a playable female character as well as some other changes. And unfortunately that version is actually missing a lot of stuff from the original as well, like the ability to walk around. So there still isn't really a definitive version of Persona 3 out there. You have to play both in order to get the full experience of playing Persona 3, which is kind of rough for a game that's 80 to 100 hours long. And it does feel a bit weird considering that people were asking for a Persona 3 remake specifically to have a definitive version of the game. And I feel like they kind of dropped the ball on that. And there's definitely going to be some kind of salt in the community if they release an improved Persona 3 Reload later on, like they do with all the Persona games. And that version does have all the stuff that they didn't include in this remake, but that's a pretty minor issue in my opinion. I think most people will really enjoy this remake, I know I'm personally enjoying it. I definitely recommend Persona 5 over this game if you haven't played it. It'll be cheaper and it's just a much better experience. But if you liked Persona 5 and you've already played Persona 5, then you should play this one too. I think you'll really like it. It's a solid 4 out of 5 for me. That's it. That's it for the review. Subscribe, check out my Twitch stream. Link in the description. There's a good chance I could be live playing Persona 3 right now.